we are with a new batch of a decade later albums to focus on for 2021. Of course, I always look at albums from 10 years ago in this series, so we're going to be looking at 2011 albums, which is an interesting year because it sort of feels like, compared to some other years, it doesn't have as many huge big name releases, but there's some really solid stuff in 2011, and it's one of my favorite years for like undiscovered gems. I mean, I probably say that about most years, to be fair, but there are some really like underground releases that didn't get talked about at all that really deserve some attention from this year. So maybe I should focus on some of those for this series this year. But of course, the opposite of that is a band who have always had hype and have always been beloved amongst many kinds of music fans. I have really never struggled to put Fleet Foxes onto anyone. They really cross so many paths and bridges to many different ears because they are incredibly accessible for what they do. Their beautifully arranged sort of orchestral feel at times is to die for, honestly. At their best, they can put out an absolutely beautiful tune and amazing melodies come through in the guitar tones. And of course, Robin's just so recognizable voice. Like, he kind of became the blueprint for a lot of indie folk artists. I feel like, you know, since the dawn of Fleet Foxes, they've influenced a lot of names. I would go as far as to say they probably influenced bands like Mumford & Sons. They probably influenced bands like the Lumineers, like some really big names in the mainstream that gave us some really well-known indie folk tracks that were actually pop songs, to be honest, considering how big they were. And yeah, I think Fleet Foxes influenced those guys. And that was even before this album, because those bands had begun a little bit earlier than 2011. And of course, this was their sophomore release. So to follow up their debut, which I think is fantastic, was a pretty hard feat to achieve. I mean, it's not just me that thinks it's fantastic. Lots of people out there think their debut is probably their best. I still think it's their best, but some people even think that Helplessness Blues is their best. And you know what? It comes pretty damn close. I did want to kick off this series properly by giving you guys an album that I truly do love, and it is one of my favorites of the year 2011, because it just makes sense to do that. And yeah, look, I'm probably going to regurgitate a lot of things that everyone else has already said. I'm just going to be spitting out the same shit people have said about this album. But you know what? I like it a lot, so it's nice to talk about something like this. I think the thing I like the most about Robin's vocals across this album, and across all of their albums, to be honest, is the fact that they're always overwrought, but they never become over dramatic. Like, you could listen to something like this and think he's going a bit over the top with his voice, some of the lyrics are a bit over the top, but it never feels that way. He always sells every word that he gives you, and I think that's just something so special about the way he delivers his vocals and the lyrics that he sings, because a lot of the lyrics on this album are certainly more reflective, kind of dwelling on his youth, his past, his even future, where he's going, and it always feels like everything's in the right place. Montezuma, perfect place to start with that. It is just truly a reflection of oneself, and the vocal charm that he has on this track is just fantastic. Like, he is just so likable instantaneously. Like, if this was your starting place for this band, and this is, you know, the first track you play because it's the first track on the album, I just think you would be hitting the right place. Like, this is the right place to begin. It's a pretty simple line, but the "oh man, what I used to be" carries a lot of weight because it's just very much just regretful and thinking about where you were once in your life and how you just aren't there anymore. It's quite a powerful moment, even though, you know, it's a pretty straightforward, simple lyric. It works very well. There's a classy elegance to Bedouin Dress, the second track. Love this one. The instrumentation just flourishes so beautifully across this track. And then like the little sort of like little like dance section, I guess you could call it. It really feels like you're watching like a period drama, and you know, they're just all kind of dancing in the main hall of like a sort of like royal family place or a royal family event, something like that. It just really has that energy to it. It exuberates a lot of power, that part, and it just is a lovely little section too. A nice bit of variety that this album brings too, because the title track doesn't really sound anything like this track, but it's not like they're, you know, not birthed out of the same universe. They totally feel like they fit on the same album, but the title track goes for a bit more of a folky type instrumental, which is a bit more classic Fleet Foxes. You know, I think if you were to describe what they sound like in one song, this probably would be that track. Again, well, you know, with the lyrics, everything kind of feels like it's crashing, everything's falling apart, and he's kind of, you know, questioning what's the point of singing Helplessness blues. Is he just wasting his time? Who the hell knows? But he's just asking a lot of questions, and there's no real answer to a lot of this either. This track totally, to me though, like I've mentioned them already, but totally reminds me of something Mumford & Sons would do. I mean, you know, like I say, I feel like they did have some kind of influence on Mumford & Sons from the get-go, but this track certainly reminds me of something that I've heard on an earlier Mumford & Sons album. I'm not entirely sure which track or which song, but there's something there. You know what, I wouldn't even be surprised if it's the 2012 album that I'm thinking of from Mumford & Sons, because it came after this one. I don't know, I'm not trying to say they ripped off or anything, but again, I just think it kind of goes to show that what they were doing did end up becoming a bit more influential than you probably would realize. Lorelei carries on the rich instrumentals that this entire album has. This is probably one of the richest instrumentals, but you know, it's not like the rest of the album doesn't have enough of those. More reflection. I love the opening line about "I guess I got old." I think the way he says it's kind of funny. You know, he's just trash on the sidewalk. He has just such a super earnest delivery though, like on every track. I love the way he delivers his voice, and I don't know, man, I just think this track just carries so many fantastic vocal melodies. The whole thing is so memorable. Every line is quotable. Like, this to me is one of their best songs, probably the best song here too, but it really goes, you know, toe to toe with some of my favorite tracks they've ever done. He has such a charming delivery, you know, even on tracks like Battery Kinsey. Like, I just love everything he does with his vocals. He truly has such a stellar voice, and you know, not that, you know, you need to be the best singer in the world to make music good, because that's not true. But I think for music like this, oh man, Fleet Foxes just nail so many aspects of what they do. Even on the more delicate tracks like Blue Spotted Tail, yeah, sure, it's not as rich or as exciting or as, you know, vibrant as some of the best tracks here, but it's still a lovely track. I guess for me, there would only really be one track I'd call like the weakest. It would definitely be the Plains Bitter Dancer little two-part track. I just wish the vocals had a bit more of a kick to them, you know? Like, so many of these tracks have fantastic vocal performances that, again, are some of the best they've ever done. But then this one track, he's just kind of restrained and doesn't really deliver what he usually gives us. He's kind of like holding back. It's not as enjoyable to listen to, which is a shame, because there's some really beautiful and heavenly like vocal harmonies at the start of the track, and then they come back at the end of the track, and I feel like just, you know, like kind of like bookending the track like this with these beautiful moments is just a bit of a waste. I think that could have carried on throughout most of the song. Build up in such an angelic way. Seriously, that is a beautiful moment for the album. But yeah, just everything in the middle kind of could do without. But overall, look, I've said so many things about each track that could apply to nearly every other track. The closing track as well is a beautiful one. Like, again, I don't want to repeat what everyone already says about this band. You all know how good they are if you're a fan of them. But you know, maybe you don't like them that much and you're listening to me and thinking, why is he saying these things about Fleet Foxes? They're so lame. But no, for me, they've always been one of those critically acclaimed indie darlings that I can't really get enough of. I always forget as well how good they are until I listen to them again. Like, I played this album just for this video. I was like, damn, I forget how good this is every time I play it. So yeah, it's aging really well, and again, they're just really showing that they are still to this day one of the best bands out of that style, out of that indie folk, chamber pop, Baroque pop little style that you know, was pretty prominent amongst critics in the late 2000s or mid 2000s. and for good reason. It's just aging so well. So let me know your thoughts on this album in the comments. What's your favorite album of theirs too? And yeah, like I say, you might not like this album that much, so I'd love to hear why you don't like it. That would be an interesting conversation to have, because generally this band is loved by a lot of people, so it's rare to see people not like them. So if you don't like them, I'd love to see what it is that you don't like. But thank you for watching. Let me know your thoughts. Tell me what I should do for this series as well in the future. That would be great. Actually, I could do some recommendations for this series. So thank you for watching. Do have a good day. Subscribe if you haven't already, and goodbye.